Good morning. Welcome to the Edge of Light. My name is Michael Hemmett. Let's take 10 breaths. On the note of these 10 breaths, I'm using my hand as a way of indicating to you, the viewer, the in and out. When I'm on my own, I don't do that. I'm also trying to breathe a little bit louder than I would normally, uh, only because when doing breaths, I find it actually a better experience when my eyes are closed. And so, if you can follow along with your eyes closed instead of watching, I think that having that as a more internal awareness is better. Not that one is more beneficial. I just like the experience better with my eyes closed. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about how non-duality is over. Um, so that might sound a little silly because there's really no such thing as non-duality being over. That doesn't make sense. It's like being aware of yourself not being aware, right? Uh, it's a it's a meaningless statement. However, I was recently talking to a good friend of mine that likes to have deep thoughts about various um, philosophical things, and we'll get into it and talk about various topics. And I'll just share that specifically this was about using sound as a way of drawing in or repelling different qualities of energy. So in this example, it was like using like loud clanging noises to repel negative energies, as they do in some cultures, like in Indonesia, or um, using beautiful chimes and bells to bring in energies, like like in a church, for example. So there's different styles, but the purpose is the same. To mitigate the energetic quality of the area through sound. Now, that's its own topic, and we can maybe that'll be another episode. But what I wanted to say to him was, well, from the non-dual perspective, um, the positive or negative, these judgments, they're all meaningless. Um, but but that's not actually the non-dual perspective. Um, because and this was the realization that I had, that I think is the end of non-duality for me, in the sense that non-duality doesn't mean it's not dual in as a because to say that if something is um, uh, like not two, then the implication that it's one, for example, like non-duality versus like the singularity of consciousness. But that binary thinking is again duality. So that's why, and Adi Shanti talks about this in a brilliant way. Um, the ancient masters, they didn't say the truth of everything, the only truth, the singular truth is singular consciousness, awareness, because that excludes everything else. So they don't want to do that because it's not true. That's not the all-encompassing truth of everything. So when we have to say one or the other, that goes back into duality. So to say non-dual is both and everything. So then I think the intermediate understanding, the purpose of non-dual philosophy is to get away from binary thinking, good, bad, plus, minus, hot, cold, all that, and to see it as the all-encompassing everything. But then what I'm realizing is that once you're accustomed to that, then that becomes a meaningless qualifier for any kind of conversation you're going to have. Because, if you say, well, I like red pillows more than blue pillows, and then someone follows up with saying, yeah, but they're all molecules. Well, okay, great, but that doesn't that doesn't mean anything. That's not helpful to the conversation. It doesn't bring the conversation forward unless you're in fact talking about unless the point is to talk about the fundamental truth. But in any other conversation where you're trying to have a qualitative um, like discourse with somebody, and you're talking about perspectives and values and um, so, well, from the non-dual perspective, it's it it it, it become it it's always meaningless, but then it becomes even more meaningless when you realize that the non-dual perspective is both and so again, going back to Adyashanti's, like when people say, is everything predetermined or do I have free will? And his answer is yes. I think that's awesome. It's such a hilarious, cheeky, and accurate way of answering a philosophical paradox. So again, it's when you have let the non-dual understanding like really saturate you, um, there's no reason to even really talk about it anymore. And so for that reason, that I'm jokingly say non-duality is dead to me. So, uh, I feel like enlightenment, the concept, um, follows that same pattern, right? So, in the beginning, when someone gets turned on to spiritual things, they hear of this concept of enlightenment, and it fills the mind with all these glorious images of the stoic monk or priest or like on the mountain in a cave, just like light shining from your ears and just like drooling from your bliss of the God consciousness, like all these various things that we fantasize about. And then as the process matures, you realize that it's only that mind, that individual mind, that is fantasizing and creating this concept of enlightenment, which is unfortunately provoked by a lot of spiritual traditions and religions. They maybe they need to lure people by encouraging them to have these fantasies. I don't know that that's a great way to do it, but that's the way they do it. But you get lured in, and I'm a victim of that as much as anybody, and I went through all that. Um, but then you realize, like, well, and it's like, oh, it's almost like, wait, what the hell? Um, the enlightenment that I've been going after is right here all the time. This is the enlightenment. There's no more than right here. Now that doesn't mean that you can't have various and wild experiences, but that's separate from the enlightenment. I mean, even to say enlightenment, just to even declare it, is kind of like indicating that it's something else. you know, as opposed to just saying right here, now. Um, Whatever enlightenment could ever be for me right here, right now, is this. And and so when we have, through psychedelics, meditation, fasting, ice bath, all these things, um, when you have these provocations to heightened states of awareness or consciousness, and then you say, oh well, that seemed more awesome than my day to day, so that must be enlightenment, this is not. Well, no, that's just another experience. um, so so once you, again, you let that reality really settle into you, and then you say, well, then it doesn't even make sense to talk about enlightenment, because whatever enlightenment is, everybody's in it all the time. It's inescapable. It's going back to, like, you know is this a pillow? Well, yeah, you could call it that, but really it's something else, and whatever that something else is, we also call that enlightenment. And everything is there all the time. So to declare someone is enlightened and someone is not is a misunderstanding of that concept. um, and so I mentioned ice bath. I want to share something about that. I used to do it a lot, um, just out of, I don't know, we'll call it laziness, or definitely not a lack of interest, because I think it's awesome. I did it again recently, and if it would be purely for the amusement of the viewer, and you have to let me know, I will do an episode in the ice, and um, we'll see how long I last. It could be funny, to watch me try to concentrate and put a sentence together, or it could be boring. We'll see. But if that seems like it'd be fun, then let me know. So there's that. Um, Another topic that I think, I've been seeing this theme come up a lot, and I don't know that it's even necessarily new or unknown to people, but people just, like, tend to forget it somehow. And so, um, what I'm seeing is, you you can either seek or be sought. And what I mean by that is, what I'm seeing in a lot of my associations, like in my families, friends, family of friends, people are dealing with uh, disharmony in their bodies, and if that's disease, poor health, various issues of that type. And and it's hard. It's like, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to downplay that physical, discomfort. I don't call it suffering, because suffering is in the mind. But um, the accumulation of a lifetime of poor choices is very tough. And so that, the only way I can reconcile that, I mean, sometimes, maybe a rock falls on you, and then you got a bad back for the rest of your life. I don't know. A shark bites you. But most of the time, through, lack of exercise, you don't stretch, you don't drink enough water, you're not eating quality foods, you know, and any one of those things can compensate for the other. Not completely, but it helps an enormous amount. Um, I think that, for example, just to run moderate distances on a regular basis can compensate for um, nutrition, and vice versa. But you can't completely compensate. So that, and also, like, I'm not a nutrition expert or a health coach, but I'm just saying, in my experience, I recommend you stay hydrated, have good nutrition, and exercise. I also notice that when one part is, you can't really take care of it, doing the other two can temporarily compensate. But you want to do all of them. Anyway, the reason why I'm going into this is because it seems like a lot of people don't do anything, and then they start to their bodies start to break down, and when the body breaks down, it affects the mind, and then people are more likely to become angry and irritated and depressed, anxious. And so um, what then the result of that is like people go through crisis, right? So when someone's in a physically or mentally bad condition, it can initiate a crisis. So that crisis is of course the system screaming out for attention, saying I need better care. Um, and so that's the thing, is like you can either seek out your well-being, taking a proactive stance, which obviously I'm recommending, or you can be distracted by a bunch of other things, and the world is obviously full of infinite distraction, and you can go that path. But when you neglect the maintenance and proper care of your system and mind, spirit, body, it will start to degrade and fall apart. And I'm not saying like live forever, any of that nonsense. It'll degrade and fall apart ahead of schedule. And so all these things are going to happen. It is inevitable. Like that's not part of that's not even up for discussion, right? That's obvious. If you don't maintain it, it's going to fall apart. So there's that. So then once you accept the reality of that inescapable aspect of being a human being with a mind, a body, and spirit, and the necessity of maintenance, then what are you going to do about it? Do you care about yourself enough to take a proactive stance in maintaining your well-being? And I just, so I feel like I do that. And of course I still do various destructive things. And, as I get a little bit older and more mature, and I have more responsibilities, I do, well, hopefully I do less stupid things. I mean, that's the goal. But the especially in the my parents' generation, um now they're 6-7 decades in. It's like reversing course, and that level entrenchment of behavioral patterns is very difficult. So I want to acknowledge that. And yet, what's it worth to you? I mean, if your body is hurting all the time, or you're constantly like upset about things, you're living in anxiety, wouldn't you just like whatever it takes? I mean, that's something I can't really wrap my mind around, is you know like if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And like why why someone wouldn't make that a priority. So um because it's not a matter of you can or you can't, like in terms of like, well, I'm either going to take a shower or I don't, or whatever, to basic maintenance. Because from the perspective uh, of life, like the larger life system that we exist in, that maintains the cycle of birth and death, if you don't maintain it, it will degrade faster. Like that again, it's inescapable. So um, so if you have to participate, then why not play the game correctly? I guess, and so that brings up, um, I think, a kind of a tough concept, in the sense that most people, I would suggest, know what is healthy and what's not, to a degree, depending on the culture you live in and the people you surround yourself with. Um, a lot of people, if you could give them A or B, the precision that they could choose the generally accepted healthier option is probably high. So then why don't people do it? And I think this comes down to a, a damaged sense of self. Um, I I think that a lot of people, um, they carry wounds of inadequacy or unlovability that sabotages any motivation to be happy and healthy all the time. And that's a tough thing to acknowledge because um, I think that especially for men, like we don't want to admit that we're hurt, because that itself feels like a wound, even though admitting that you're hurt is how you get better, right? You don't get better by ignoring the problem. Um, so unfortunately, at the very bottom of all these psychological traps is core wounding to the psyche that either I don't deserve this or yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think that's I'm not sure if there's another way to put that is I don't deserve it. So I guess that's something that I'm just kind of pushing out to the crowd is um, if you find yourself trying to do something that you know is good for you, but in the reflection of it, you're not getting the results that you want. It's not coming to. It feels like you're procrastinating, resisting. Um, the most meaningful question to ask yourself is, why don't I deserve this? Why don't I deserve to be happy and healthy? And I think that could be a very significant thread to follow back and uncover something. Um, a lot of people, um, through just accidental errors in parenting, can transmit a message to the kids, um, that what you're doing or who you are is not good enough. And and sometimes there's just terrible parents out there that do it on purpose. That's probably, I mean, it's all unconscious, but at the level of that parent, they're trying to use manipulation to get behavior out of their kids. But I think that even more frequently than that, you know mom's busy trying to make dinner and dad's working or doing something, and then the kid needs attention and love and it's not there, and then that can become a message, um, because life is full of challenges and obstacles and all kinds of things. We can't get everything that we want all the time, and sometimes we can internalize those messages as being that we are undeserving or unloved, and of course that's not true. We are all deserving of love. So that inconsistency between the desire to have this accurate perception of yourself as being a beautiful and loving person that deserves to be happy, and not feeling that way. Okay, so there's a something in there, um, and memory, experience, thought patterns, all that that is creating this inconsistency. And if you are finding yourself that you have these goals, you can't get there, uh, then this is what you need to do. You need to go into that space of like, where am I sabotaging myself, um, and why? And really just, I mean, again, what better thing could you do with your time than to remove these wounds. I mean, I would liken it to, let's say you had a rock in your shoe, and you're going to go running. Well, as you're running, maybe you don't notice it when you first put your shoe on, but as you're running, oh, this kind of hurts. Um, as I'm going on in this example, most people would just try to shift their weight, or they start limping, or they try to ignore it. Maybe go on the outside or the inside of the foot. They try to accommodate it. But everything that you do to accommodate that wound is going to create a problem somewhere else. So like if you start shifting this way, then your spine and your hips are off, and then you're now going to have headaches because your neck is out of, all these things. So the only reasonable thing to do, stop running, remove the rock, and then go about your business. And that's I would accept that it's a difficult thing to recognize. You say, oh, well, I have a problem, I don't know what it is, so I'll just keep going. And that happens all the time, because whatever the seed of the issue is going to be difficult to discern. But that's totally fine. It's totally fine. It's not about knowing exactly where you're going to perfectly, with 100% efficiency, execute the extraction. That's unreasonable. What is reasonable is to say, something's up, this is a priority, take care of it. So, yeah. Anyway, that's about all of our time. I love you guys. I wish you the best, and all the positive momentum to extract all the little irritations. So, take care.